You wake up one morning and the man you've shared your life with for 45 years is gone. No warning, no conversation, just a note on the kitchen counter that says, "Found someone younger." That was my reality 6 months ago. But here's what he didn't know. I found something too. $3.7 million he thought he'd hidden from me. And by the time I was done, my divorce lawyer called it the cleanest case she'd ever seen. My name is Diane Mitchell, and this is my story. Before we dive in, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your city and state in the comments below. There's something powerful about knowing we're not alone in this journey, isn't there? Now, let me take you back to where it all began. It was a Tuesday morning in March. I remember because Tuesdays were always our grocery shopping days. After 45 years of marriage, you fall into rhythms, comfortable patterns, the kind that make you feel safe, even if you're slowly becoming invisible. Richard and I had built what I thought was a good life together in our home outside of Portland, Oregon. We'd raised 3 children, survived job losses, health scares, and the death of both our parents. We had grandchildren now, 5 beautiful souls who called us Grandma and Grandpa, and filled our house with chaos every other weekend. I was 68 years old. Richard was 71. We were supposed to be entering our golden years together. You know, the ones they show in those retirement commercials with couples walking on beaches at sunset, holding hands and laughing about nothing in particular. We met in 1978 at a community college in Eugene. I was studying to be a teacher. He was taking night classes while working construction during the day. He had this smile, confident, warm, like he knew exactly where his life was going, and he wanted you to come along for the ride. We married 8 months later. I was 23. He was 26. Everyone said we were too young, too rushed. We proved them all wrong, or so I thought. The early years were hard. We had our first child, Sarah, when I was 25. Money was tight. We lived in a tiny apartment where you could hear every word the neighbors said through paper-thin walls. Richard was working 60-hour weeks trying to get his real estate career off the ground. I was teaching 2nd grade and coming home to a colicky baby. We survived on love and stubbornness and the absolute certainty that we were building something that mattered. And we did build it. Richard's business took off in the 90s. We bought our first real house, had 2 more kids. I kept teaching because I loved it, not because we needed the money. We took family vacations to Disneyland and Yellowstone. We hosted Thanksgiving dinners for 20 people. We were the couple other couples looked at and said, "That's what we want." But somewhere along the way, and I couldn't tell you exactly when, we stopped being partners and started being roommates. The conversations got shorter, the touches less frequent. We'd sit at dinner and talk about the kids, the weather, what needed fixing around the house. But we didn't talk about us, about dreams or fears or any of the things that actually mattered. I told myself it was normal, that this is what marriage looks like after 45 years, comfortable, predictable, safe. I was so incredibly wrong. That Tuesday, I came downstairs at 7:30, like I always did. Richard's coffee cup was in the sink. His reading glasses were on the kitchen table. But he wasn't there. On the counter, weighted down by the salt shaker, was a folded piece of notebook paper. I still remember the feeling in my stomach when I picked it up. You know that sensation, when your body knows something terrible before your brain catches up? My hands were shaking before I even opened it. The note was short, brutal in its brevity. "Diane, I found someone who makes me feel young again. I need to live the rest of my life on my own terms. My lawyer will be in touch. Don't try to call me, Richard." 23 words. That's all 45 years of marriage was worth to him. 23 words. I read it 3 times. Then I sat down at that kitchen table and stared at nothing for what must have been an hour. The coffee maker beeped. I'd forgotten to turn it off. The neighbor's dog barked. A car drove past. Life just continued, completely indifferent to the fact that mine had just imploded. The first week was a blur. I told the kids. That was the hardest part. Watching their faces crumble as they tried to process that their father, their hero, had just walked away from all of us. My daughter Sarah held me while I cried. My son Michael wanted to drive to wherever Richard was and have a conversation, as he put it. My youngest Jennifer just kept saying, "But why? Why would he do this?" I couldn't answer her. I couldn't answer any of them. Richard's lawyer called on day 5, a woman named Patricia Thornburg with a voice like ice water. She was professional, efficient, and clearly expensive. She informed me that Richard was filing for divorce and that I should retain counsel immediately. She mentioned something about equitable distribution of assets and suggested I'd be well taken care of. Then she hung up. Well taken care of. Like I was a pet he was rehoming. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in our bed, my bed now, I supposed, and stared at the ceiling. 45 years. We'd bought this house in 1998, painted every room together. I chose the kitchen tiles on my hands and knees, making sure each one was perfect. Richard had built the deck out back with his own hands, board by board, the summer our youngest graduated high school, and he just left it all. Left me. But something was nagging at me. Something Patricia Thornburg had said, or maybe it was, her tone. Well taken care of. There was something smug in those words, something that made my spine stiffen. Richard had been a commercial real estate developer. Successful, but not extravagantly so, or at least that's what I'd always believed. We lived comfortably. Nice house, good cars, annual vacations. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. We had retirement accounts, some savings, the house paid off. I'd always assumed we were looking at a modest but secure retirement. But Patricia Thornburg's confidence made me wonder, what exactly did she think I'd be well taken care of with? I got out of bed and went to Richard's office. I'd rarely gone into Richard's office over the years. It was his space, his desk, his files, his domain. I handled the household finances, paid the bills, managed our joint checking account. He handled his business accounts and investments. That's how we'd always divided things. Traditional, maybe, but it worked for us. Or so I thought. The office smelled like him. His cologne, old paper, and the faint scent of the cigars he thought I didn't know he smoked in there with the window open. I turned on the desk lamp and stood there, looking at 45 years of a man's professional life crammed into one room. Where do you even start? I started with the filing cabinet. Tax returns going back 7 years. That's how long you're supposed to keep them, right? I pulled them out one by one and spread them across his desk. Even looking at them made my head hurt. Numbers and forms and schedules. Richard had always handled this. I just signed where he told me to sign. But now I looked, really looked. Our joint income, deductions, investment income. It all seemed normal, maybe even modest. We'd reported about $90,000 in income the previous year. That seemed right for 2 retired people living on pensions and Social Security with some investment income. I went through each year, 2023, 2022, 2021. The numbers were consistent, boring even. This is what a normal couple's taxes look like. But then I noticed something. On Schedule B, that's where you report interest and dividend income. There was a line item, just a number, $847. Under the source, it just said, Foreign account, see statement. Foreign account? I stared at those 2 words. Foreign account. We'd never traveled internationally except for one trip to Canada in 2003. Richard had never mentioned investing overseas. He'd always said he trusted good old American companies, American banks. So what was this? I'd never heard Richard mention a foreign account. I dug through the files looking for anything that said statement or foreign or anything that might explain this. Nothing. Just normal bank statements from our local credit union. Investment statements from Fidelity showing our retirement accounts. The foreign account statement wasn't there, which meant Richard had deliberately kept it, separate, hidden it. My hands were shaking as I moved to his desk drawers. The top drawer was the usual chaos: pens, paper clips, old business cards, a broken watch he'd been meaning to fix for 3 years. The second drawer had files labeled property listings, contractor bids, permits, business stuff. I flipped through them quickly. Nothing unusual. The bottom drawer was locked. I sat back in his chair. The leather creaked. Richard's chair, molded to his body from years of sitting in this exact spot. In 45 years, I'd never noticed that drawer had a lock. Or maybe I had noticed and never cared. Why would I? We trusted each other. Or at least I trusted him. But now that little lock seemed to be mocking me. What did Richard need to lock away? What didn't he want me to see? I moved to his desk drawers. The top drawer was the usual chaos: pens, paper clips, old business cards. The second drawer had files labeled property listings, contractor bids, permits, business stuff. The bottom drawer was locked. I sat back. In 45 years, I'd never noticed that drawer had a lock. Or maybe I had noticed and never cared. Why would I? We trusted each other. Or at least, I trusted him. I looked around the office. Where would Richard keep a key to a locked drawer? I checked the desk organizer, the pencil cup, under the desk pad. Then I remembered. Richard had a small wooden box on his bookshelf. He kept cufflinks in it, tie clips, random things. I pulled it down and opened it. There, under a pair of cufflinks I'd given him for our 30th anniversary, was a small key. My heart was pounding as I unlocked that drawer. Inside were 3 file folders and a leather-bound notebook. The first folder was labeled Cayman. Inside were bank statements from First Caribbean International Bank. Account holder, Richard Mitchell. Balance, as of February 2024, 1,047,392. I actually gasped. Out loud. Alone in that office, I gasped like I'd been punched. $1.2 million in the Cayman Islands, money I knew nothing about. With shaking hands, I opened the second folder. Switzerland to Credit Suisse, balance 1,193,215. The third folder, Singapore. DBS Bank, balance $627,488. I did the math 3 times because I couldn't believe it. $3.767 million, hidden in offshore accounts, money he'd never told me about, money that wasn't on our tax returns, money that didn't exist as far as I, or apparently the U.S. government, knew. The leather notebook was a ledger, handwritten entries going back 15 years, dates, amounts, account transfers, deposits that corresponded with property sales from his business, money he'd been siphoning off, bit by bit for over a decade. I sat in that chair until sunrise, reading every page, every statement, every entry. By the time light started filtering through the window, I understood what Richard had been doing. He'd been preparing to leave me for years, hiding money, building his escape fund, and now that he'd found his someone younger, he was ready to disappear into his new life, leaving me with whatever scraps the divorce settlement deemed equitable. But he'd made one catastrophic mistake. He'd left the evidence in a locked drawer, and I'd found the key. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind was racing. Anger, betrayal, shock. They were all there, fighting for dominance. But underneath all of that was something else. Something cold and clear and calculating. Richard thought he was so smart. He thought he'd planned this perfectly. Leave the wife with the house and the retirement accounts visible in the U.S., take his millions and start over. Patricia Thornburg probably had no idea these accounts existed. They'd settle the divorce based on the assets they knew about, and Richard would walk away with his fortune intact. But I knew now. I knew everything. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I called my daughter Sarah at 8 in the morning. "Honey, I need the name of the best divorce attorney you know." "Mom, are you okay? You sound—" "I'm fine. Better than fine. I just need a lawyer, the best one you know, someone ruthless." There was a pause. Then, "I'll text you a name right now." 20 minutes later, I had a name. Catherine Chen. Sarah said she was the attorney everyone in Portland feared in a divorce. She's expensive, Mom, really expensive. That's fine, I said. I can afford her. And I could. Because even though Richard thought he'd hidden his millions, they were still marital assets, and I was about to make sure I got every penny that was legally mine. Catherine Chen's office was in downtown Portland on the 20th floor of a glass building with a view of the mountains. Everything about it screamed success, from the minimalist furniture to the original artwork on the walls. Catherine herself was 50-ish, impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She shook my hand, offered me coffee, and sat down across from me with a legal pad. "Mrs. Mitchell, Sarah speaks very highly of you. Tell me what's going on." I handed her the 3 folders. She opened the first one. Her eyebrows went up, just barely, but I saw it. She opened the second, then the third. Then she looked at me. "Does your husband know you have these?" "No." "Does his attorney know these accounts exist?" "I don't believe so." Catherine leaned back in her chair, and for the first time since Richard left, I saw someone smile about my situation. "Mrs. Mitchell, I think we're going to get along very well. Before I tell you what happened next, and trust me, what happened next was beautiful, could you do me a favor? If you're finding value in this story, if you're feeling even a fraction of what I felt in that moment, please hit that subscribe button below. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because what came next? That's the part where everything changed. Catherine explained the strategy over the next hour. "Here's what's going to happen," she said. "Richard's attorney is going to file discovery requests. They'll ask for financial disclosures, tax returns, bank statements. They'll want a full accounting of marital assets. And when they do that, Richard is going to have to disclose these accounts or commit perjury. What if he lies?" Catherine's smile was razor sharp. "Then we produce the evidence he lied, and a judge will crucify him. Hiding assets in a divorce is serious. Hiding assets offshore? That's another level entirely. We're talking about potential criminal charges, IRS involvement. The whole thing could become a nightmare for him. So what do? We wait. We let him file. We respond to discovery with full transparency about every asset we know about. We're going to be perfect angels, completely forthcoming. And then, when he files his financial disclosure, we're going to see if he's stupid enough to omit these accounts. And if he does, then we spring the trap." The next 6 weeks were the longest of my life. Richard's attorney filed the divorce petition. I was served papers at my house by a process server who looked apologetic when he handed them to me. The grounds were irreconcilable differences. How tidy, how convenient. Catherine filed my response. We disclosed everything: our house, our vehicles, my retirement account, Richard's pension, our joint savings account, every asset I'd known about during our marriage. We were meticulous, perfect. Then came Richard's financial disclosure. Catherine called me the day she received it. "Diane, can you come to my office today?" I drove downtown, my stomach in knots. Catherine had Richard's financial statements spread out on her conference table when I arrived. "He didn't disclose them," she said simply. I stared at the papers. There was our house, valued at $425,000, his pension, some investment accounts, total marital assets according to Richard's disclosure, approximately $850,000. $3 million was just missing. "He committed perjury," I said. "He signed a sworn statement that this was a complete and accurate accounting of all assets. So yes, technically, he committed perjury." Catherine tapped the documents with one perfectly manicured finger. "Now we decide how we want to play this. What are my options?" Option 1. We immediately file a motion revealing the offshore accounts and ask for emergency relief. Fast, aggressive, but it shows our hand quickly. Option 2. We let him think we don't know. We negotiate based on his disclosed assets, let him think he's getting away with it. Then, right before the settlement is finalized, we reveal what we know and renegotiate from a position of total power. Which would you recommend? Catherine smiled. "How patient are you feeling?" We went with option 2. Catherine engaged with Patricia Thornburg in settlement negotiations. They went back and forth for weeks. Richard's initial offer was insulting. He'd keep his pension and most of the investment accounts. I'd keep the house and my retirement account. It would have left me with maybe $300,000 in assets, while he rode off into the sunset with over $4 million. Catherine played her role perfectly. She negotiated hard but reasonably. She pushed for a better split of the known assets, got Richard up to offering me $450,000 in total assets. Patricia Thornburg seemed pleased with herself, confident. She probably thought she'd handled Catherine Chen and won. Meanwhile, I was watching Richard from a distance. Through my children, I heard things. He'd rented a condo in Seattle. Expensive place, waterfront view. The someone younger had a name, Amber. She was 43, a yoga instructor he'd met at a wellness retreat I'd encouraged him to go to for his health. The irony wasn't lost on me. My son Michael told me Richard was planning a trip to Bali with Amber. "He seems really happy, Mom," Michael said, and I could hear the confusion and anger in his voice, like he doesn't even care what he did to you. "It's okay, honey," I told him. "Everything's going to be okay." And I meant it, because I knew something Richard didn't. His perfect escape plan was about to explode in his face. 4 months after Richard left, we were scheduled for a final settlement conference. This was it, the meeting where we'd finalize everything and prepare for the judge to sign off on the divorce. We met at Patricia Thornburg's office. It was one of those intimidating law firm conference rooms with a table that could seat 20 people and windows overlooking the entire city. Richard was there with Patricia. I was there with Catherine. A mediator joined us by video conference. Richard looked good, tanned, relaxed. He'd lost weight, new haircut. He was wearing clothes I'd never seen before, more stylish, younger. A navy blazer that probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget used to be. He barely looked at me. When he did, there was nothing in his eyes. No guilt, no sadness, nothing. It was like looking at a stranger wearing my husband's face. Patricia Thornburg started the meeting. She had this way of talking, clipped, efficient, like she was reading a grocery list. "I think we've reached a fair agreement. Mrs. Mitchell will receive the marital home valued at $425,000, her retirement account totaling $68,000, and $50,000 from the joint savings. Mr. Mitchell will retain his pension, his business accounts, and the investment portfolio. This represents a roughly equal split of the marital assets at approximately $425,000 each." She slid a document across the table toward me, the settlement agreement, all printed up and ready for signatures. The mediator looked at me through the video screen. "Mrs. Mitchell, have you had the opportunity to review these terms with your attorney?" I could feel Richard watching me, waiting, probably thinking about his next trip with Amber, maybe planning where to live with his millions once this inconvenient legal matter was wrapped up. "Yes," I said. "I've reviewed them thoroughly." "And do you agree to these terms?" the mediator asked. I looked at Catherine. She nodded slightly, giving me the signal we'd planned. "No," I said quietly. "I don't agree to these terms." Patricia's pen stopped moving. She looked up, her perfectly maintained composure showing the first crack of irritation. "Mrs. Mitchell, we've been negotiating in good faith for months. These terms are more than fair given the length of the marriage and—" "Fair?" I interrupted. The word came out harder than I intended. "Nothing about this is fair, but that's not why I'm rejecting the terms." Richard finally looked at me directly, really looked at me. "Diane, come on, let's just end this. You're getting the house. You'll be fine. We both deserve to move on with our lives." We both deserved to move on with our lives. Like he hadn't already moved on 4 months ago, like he hadn't been planning this for years. "I'll be fine?" I kept my voice steady, calm. Catherine had coached me on this. Don't get emotional. Stay in control. "Richard, I'll be more than fine. once we discuss all the marital assets. All the assets are on the table, Patricia said, and now there was a definite edge creeping into her voice. She clearly didn't like having her perfectly arranged settlement disrupted. Catherine reached down and opened her briefcase. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the suddenly quiet room. She pulled out 3 folders, copies of the ones I'd found in Richard's office. She placed them on the table in front of her, then slowly slid them across to Patricia's side. The folders made a soft sliding sound against the polished wood. That sound, I'll never forget it. These assets weren't on the table, Catherine said, her voice pleasant, almost cheerful. Patricia opened the first folder. I watched her face change. Her eyes widened slightly. Her mouth tightened. She opened the second folder, then the third. With each one, she seemed to pale another shade. Then she looked at Richard, and the look on her face. I'd never seen a lawyer look at their own client with such pure, undisguised fury. "What is this?" Her voice was ice. Richard was staring at the folders like they were snakes coiled to strike. His tan seemed to fade right before my eyes, leaving him looking gray and old. Those are... Where did you... His voice cracked. This man who'd walked out on me with such confidence, who'd looked so relaxed and happy when he walked in here, suddenly looked terrified. "Mrs. Mitchell discovered these documents in the marital home," Catherine said, still in that pleasant conversational tone that made the words even more devastating. 3 offshore accounts, Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore. Total value approximately $3.7 million. Assets that Mr. Mitchell failed to disclose in his sworn financial statement filed with this court 2 months ago. The room was silent. The mediator leaned forward on the video screen. "Mr. Mitchell, are these accounts in your name?" Richard looked like he might be sick. He glanced at Patricia, who was staring at him with an expression of absolute fury. "I need to speak with my client privately," Patricia said tightly. "Of course," Catherine said. "We'll wait." They were gone for 40 minutes. Through the closed door, I could hear raised voices, Patricia's mostly, sharp, angry. At one point, something hit the wall, maybe a fist, maybe a hand slapping the table. I couldn't tell. Catherine sat calmly beside me, checking her phone, occasionally making notes on her legal pad. She looked completely relaxed, like this was all going exactly according to plan. "How are you feeling?" she asked me quietly. "Honestly, I feel powerful," I said, and I meant it. For the first time in 4 months, maybe for the first time in years, I felt completely in control of my own life. When they came back, Patricia Thornburg looked like she'd aged 5 years. Her perfect composure was cracked. There was a tension in her jaw, a tightness around her eyes. Richard looked worse. His expensive blazer looked rumpled. His face was red and blotchy. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "My client is prepared to disclose these accounts," Patricia said. Each word sounded painful, like she was pulling them out one by one. "And to negotiate a new settlement based on the full scope of marital assets." "I'm glad to hear that," Catherine said. "Here are our terms." She slid a document across the table. I'd seen it before. We'd prepared it 2 days ago, sitting in Catherine's office, going through every possible scenario. The terms were clear. I would receive the house outright, valued at $425,000. My retirement account of $68,000. The $50,000 from joint savings. 60% of Richard's pension, a significant monthly income for the rest of my life, and $2.1 million from the offshore accounts transferred to an account in my name within 30 days. Richard would keep the remaining $1.6 million and his business assets. It was more than half, significantly more. But as Catherine had explained to me, when you hide assets in a divorce, when you commit perjury on sworn financial documents, you don't get to benefit from that misconduct. The court could, and would, award me more than an equal split as a penalty for his deception. Patricia read the terms. I watched her eyes move down the page. She looked at Richard. "This is..." We need time to consider. No time, Catherine said, cutting her off smoothly. These terms are available today, right now in this room. Tomorrow we file a motion with the court, disclosing Mr. Mitchell's perjury and financial misconduct. We'll seek sanctions. We'll also be notifying the IRS about these unreported offshore accounts, which, as I'm sure you're aware, carries significant penalties. We'll seek criminal charges for the false statements he made under oath. At that point, these generous terms will be off the table. You can't, Richard started, his voice cracking. We absolutely can, Catherine said. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. And we will. Your choice is simple, Mr. Mitchell. Accept these terms today and walk away with $1.6 million and your freedom, or refuse and spend the next year in court, possibly in criminal court, watching your legal fees mount into six figures while your reputation is destroyed and you potentially face jail time for perjury and tax evasion. Your call. The room was silent. I could hear Richard breathing, fast, shallow breaths, the sound of panic. Patricia leaned over and whispered something to Richard. He shook his head violently. She whispered more urgently, her hand gripping his arm. He put his head in his hands, elbows on the conference table, looking like a man who'd just watched his whole world collapse. And maybe he had. The mediator cleared his throat on the video screen. Mr. Mitchell, do you need more time to consult with your attorney? Richard looked up. His eyes were red. He looked at Patricia, who gave him a tight nod. Then he looked at me. Finally. He really looked at me for the first time since this whole thing started. You went through my files, he said. There was something in his voice. Not quite accusation. Maybe disbelief. Maybe the dawning realization that I wasn't the pushover he'd thought I was. You left me a note on the kitchen counter, I replied. And you hid millions of dollars from me for 15 years. I think we're past worrying about privacy. I'm going to accept the terms, he said to Patricia. Just make it stop. 45 minutes later, we'd signed a settlement agreement. Catherine gathered her papers. We'll file this with the court tomorrow. The divorce should be final within 30 days. As we were leaving, Richard called out, Diane. I turned. I never meant to hurt you, he said. I looked at this man I'd loved for 45 years, this stranger who'd shared my life and then tried to steal from me on his way out the door. Yes, you did, I said. You just didn't mean to get caught. And then I walked out. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Catherine called me on a Thursday morning. It's done, you're officially divorced, and the first transfer from the offshore accounts will hit your bank within 48 hours. I thanked her, hung up, and then I sat in my kitchen, in my house, and felt nothing but relief. The money arrived, all $2.1 million of it. My children were stunned. My daughter Sarah kept asking if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I wanted her to stay with me. I assured her I was fine. More than fine. I heard through the grapevine that Richard and Amber broke up 3 months after the divorce was final. Apparently, once his financial situation became clear and his spending power drastically reduced, she decided she wanted to focus on her own journey. I didn't feel sorry for him, not even a little bit. As for me, I'm still in Portland, still in the house Richard built the deck on all those years ago, though I had that deck renovated, made it better. Mine. I travel now. Took my daughters to Italy last fall. Just the 4 of us. I volunteer at a women's shelter downtown, helping women who are going through divorces navigate the legal system. I tell them my story. I tell them to look in the locked drawers. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that everything happens for a reason, or that this was all meant to be, or any of those empty phrases people use when they don't know what else to say. What happened to me was a betrayal. Pure and simple. It hurt. It still hurts sometimes. But I got justice. And that's not nothing. 6 months ago, I woke up to a note that ended my marriage. Today, I wake up in a home that's entirely mine, with resources that give me freedom I never had before, and a spine made of steel that I didn't know I possessed. Richard wanted to live the rest of his life on his own terms. Fine. So do I. And trust me, my terms are a lot better than his.